Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined by Tate for a very interesting spoiler discussion because we're going to be talking Game of Thrones. It's been a while. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms has just finished airing yesterday. Oh God, still Sky here, but it's kind of going to be HBO Max next month, and it's HBO Max
When's
in
it
America.
change over? Yeah, when's it change over?
March the 26th. And I don't get paid commission from Sky, but any UK folk, Sky TV moving forward, you'll be given for free Netflix, Disney, HBO Max with their basic TV package. So we call it Sky Stream, where it's just like a perk. And we pay, oh God, I think ours is $34 a month. And I said to my parents, well, I'm keeping it now because I'm getting Disney for free, which I don't have. I want HBO Max for HBO stuff. And obviously it's going to have everything new is going to be under the HBO Max banner from next year. Weird tangent, but Night of the Seven Kingdoms doesn't meet that jurisdiction. It is technically part of Sky here in the UK, Sky Atlantic for its last few weeks. And it's safe to say this show, run February the 25th for context, might go down as one of the highest rated shows of the year. And we're 2 months in. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. This show has done something which, I mean, we'll go into it when we kind of talk about things, but it's done something that House of the Dragon didn't quite do, which is kind of capture audiences back into the world of Game of Thrones. I think maybe there was a bit too much bad blood after the end of season 8 of Game of Thrones that people were a little bit nervous getting back into it. And House of the Dragon season 1 was fantastic, and there was hype behind it. But House of the Dragon season 2, not as... I wouldn't say not as good, just not as enticing. It didn't bring as many people back. Like it didn't have me as hyped going into it. Whereas this, I had zero hype for this series, and coming out of it, I'm really, really hyped about this series.
Yeah, no, I like that, and it's a big part of this. That House of the Dragon, context-wise, I went into season 1 like, do I care? I did care. I loved season 1. I was like, wow, this is great. We've got Game of Thrones back. It's a prequel, and it's an interesting prequel. I can live with the concept that it was going to go the story direction it did. I'd read most of Fire and Blood at that point, so I'd known where characters are going to go. Season 2 I liked, but season 2 was missing something being Battle of the Gullet, which is season 3, episode 1, which is really frustrating because they consciously chose to literally take the episodes and move it to season 3. So I'm very excited for season 3. And because of that, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms was this, there's a Hedge Knight trilogy. Oh, they're like novellas. They're not novels, they're novellas. They're 90 pages each. And there's 6 episodes. They're going to be 30 minutes long. And I was really like, ooh, okay. Are we expanding? I know we've gone straight into like our thoughts going in, but I think it's integral for this show because we probably wouldn't be doing the stream without it. But I was sent screeners by HBO in December and mid-December, all 6 episodes. I watched them the day before the embargo. They sat in my account for 6 weeks. Not lazily, it was very busy. But you know when you don't... When The Last of Us Season 1 dropped in my account many years ago, I binged that. I looked horrible. Like I did 8 episodes in a row, 9, however many it was. And that was one sitting deep. I'm rewatching Peaky Blinders. I've just finished watching Peaky Blinders. I binged season 4 or 5 in one sitting on a Saturday night. So
yeah,
nothing wrong with A Night of Seven Kingdoms leading into it. I was like, okay, the placement between House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, there's no dragons. I'm okay with that. I won't do House of Dragon spoilers. Obviously, spoiler, we know the dragons die out, but I won't, for those that do care, I won't go to the lineage side of it, but people can comment. I was like, okay, sometimes no expectations gives you a great experience. I binged all 6 episodes in one evening on a Sunday, and I was sat there like that meme of the kid with veins popping out of his neck. Like, I've got nobody to message about this show. I have nobody to talk to. I can only tell people it's good and to go and see it. And this is January. And I just have to say, and I'm going to really get into your experience now, which I'm more excited by. Week to week, to see the clips being shared of episodes, to see the love for the show, the love for the cast, the performers, the behind-the-scenes videos coming out, the lead up to episode 5. I will be really open to say I had the luck and the opportunity to see it all early, and I do not regret that. But man, this week to week, absolutely nailed it. And probably the glaring criticism from my spoiler-free review was, I said I'm unsure about it being done on a weekly release. I don't know if it will benefit it, if they'll lose people by the first 2 episodes. But I said when they get to 3 onwards, they're in. And oh man, I did not expect the show to be both as popular and highly regarded as it is. I'm delighted. And Tayte, that's going to lead me into you. I want your initial thoughts on how it's been for you week to week. Or did you come in late? Because I've had so many different people message about the show.
I came in late. I came in really late, which is odd for Thrones because I'm normally the person who wakes up on a Monday morning or whatever and catches up with it as it would have aired on the Sunday night and whatever. I'm one of those people. Like for every single episode of Game of Thrones, you know, I think from series 3 onwards, I was watching it on a weekly basis, every single episode. When House of the Dragon aired, I was watching it on a weekly basis, the morning after every single day. Yeah. And for this series, I don't know. I just didn't have as much kind of, you know, interest in it. I thought, okay, it's a mini novella story. Like I didn't really know much about kind of this part of Westerosi history or anything like that. I haven't read any of the novellas, haven't read any of the books. I've read some of the books, but like I hadn't really invested into it. So I got the experience that a few people got, which is I learned the story of this show through memes before I really got into it. So it's the character, you know, shitting in the field, episode 1, you know, with Sir Duncan, you know, that's the first thing that came out. You know, it's then the Aegon comment or the egg comment of I've got hair growing from my stones, you know, and stuff like that. That's not a thing to say, you know, like those kind of things. And then it got through to the I think it was episode 4 where everyone stopped putting up memes and started saying this is the best Thrones that has happened since the original series. And that's what made me finally go, oh, okay, maybe I should get on this show. And then I started watching it the same day that that In the Name of the Mother dropped. So I watched it, and then as soon as I finished it, I went and watched In the Name of the Mother as it came out. So I watched the first 5 episodes, pretty much binged them. Not all together, just kind of like over the course of like I'd watch 1 or 2 a day, and then I got to the day where it was like that episode dropped. So I kind of got the fast run up to it for the hype point that everyone else was at for the series. And I completely understood the hype. I was so on board with it from episode 1. It's a very different tone to the other Game of Thrones projects. It's a lot more humorous. It also is a lot, in some cases, a lot more bleak and a lot more kind of like eye-opening. And I think maybe the humor makes it hit harder. Maybe with Game of Thrones, you're expecting bleak, dark moments. With House of the Dragon, you're expecting it to be miserable. You're expecting characters to die. You're expecting it to be horrific. With this show, it was very whimsy, especially through the first few episodes. Loads of jokes, loads of kind of, you know, hilarious things. The flashbacks to, you know, Dunk as a kid and stuff like that. So, you know, it kind of hit harder in the harder moments. And my God, episodes 4 and episodes 5, wow, what amazing 2-punch kind of set of episodes. You know, first of all, setting up for the 7, you know, getting everyone ready, the speech at the end of the episode, absolutely phenomenal. And then we actually get to the trial itself, and even though we don't see a ridiculous amount of the trial, we do get the backstory, we do get, you know, all of that. I think the entire show was so well put together, and it worked so well as a little side quest. And I'm not going to lie, I'm so excited, even after today, episode 6, I'm excited to see what happens next. I'm excited to see where the story goes. And that's something that I haven't really, I've been intrigued by House of the Dragon, but I haven't been like excited to see where the story goes. It's caught my attention and gone, oh, okay, this is interesting. I'll see where it goes. But this is like, wow, okay, I really can't wait for the second series. And I'll go recommend it to people. It's a great series.
I'm fully on board with you on this. And we will say, people watching at home, it's a spoiler discussion. So comment your spoilers, your thoughts, your experiences, because whilst it's about, what, 3 hours runtime, theoretically, I literally binged it on a Sunday evening. And I just kept pressing play. It's not that I was like, oh, no, I need to watch it for a video. I've done that before. This was, oh, I can't wait to continue. What's happening next? And the structure of the 6 episodes. And I think something what you said, it feels more like Thrones, right? Game of Thrones is this beautiful once in a million TV show approach where you have so many differing storylines. And not only do you have differing storylines, not only do you have different characters being partnered up, you have different purposes. Some of those storylines are fantasy. It's Daenerys, it's dragons, it's White Walkers in the north. Some of them is outright politics, King's Landing, the council. Other thing is a war going on with the Battle of the Five Kings, and there are so many incredible things that came. I mean, even when we used to have spoiler discussions, what was the structure? We started at the north every episode, we worked our way down south to cover the story each week. So to kind of see this in isolation, and I think a lot of people have said this, it's incredibly reminiscent of Arya and the Hound. That's what people are comparing it to. Completely different personalities of individuals. You know, you've got Hound, Arya, and Egg and Dunk, but just that logic of the two sort of going their way. And it's not the adoptive father, which we've seen a lot in TV and film recently. And obviously this was written, I think, in the late 90s, the first novella came out, and season 1 is based off the first of the 3. Obviously, we now know season 2 is filming. And I'm guessing there's a good chance season 3 is going to get made. I think they've nailed the approach to this, and I think Ira Parker's the showrunner. He was involved in House of the Dragon season 1, and he came on to do this. I'm going to give credit to HBO. There was an interview with the head of HBO recently where he spoke about what's going on between House of the Dragon showrunner, I think it's Ryan Condon, and George R. R. Martin, because there's obviously a huge controversy in the middle of that. I actually don't disagree with the head of HBO. He says, well, George R. R. Martin asked me to hire him. So I did. You know, game, set, match. But Ira Parker, it feels like he's not found a niche, but George R. R. Martin has spoken public about he loves the story. These are two of his favorite characters to write for. He says, whilst there's 3 novellas, he's got tons more story ideas. I'm going to say park the bus, George R. R. Martin, please, and finish those 2 books.
Didn't he? I saw an interview or a point that said like there's 12 unpublished or unfinished novellas that are all about Dunk and Egg or something like that.
Yep. I believe I won't spoil the fate of if anyone knows the lineage and the at this point in time in canon, because this is prior to Game of Thrones, like House of the Dragon and many other things, the history has been written in the future storyline. So if you really want to look back, you can see what has or hasn't happened to said characters. The actor of Dunk dropped a very mild spoiler about his character's fate. I'm not going to get into that too much, but it's very intriguing. I've just got a comment by Maynard saying, part of people love the show is because of how tied they are modern society and said technology. It gives that peaceful, basic, and honourable struggles our ancestors faced. Yeah, like even that, even just a squire and a knight, and he's a hedge knight. He isn't a lord. He's not evil. I mean, should we talk about some characters to get into it properly? Because Sir Duncan the Tall, played by Peter Claffey, an ex-rugby player, rugby union, I believe. I saw a lot of Six Nations posts about him recently. I don't think he actually played in the Six Nations. I think he was in like the youth version.
Either the youth version or like they have something called like the A team, which is like the team below the main squad, kind of like he played in that version or something like that. But you pick a big tough actor, I guess.
I mean, can we make a comment, right? We speak so much about wrestlers turned actors. Not that John Cena's been Game of Thrones, but I feel like this is one of the, in football, you got Vinnie Jones, right? Is this the first like rugby player turned actor?
I can't
that can actually act as well.
I mean, in America, they have a lot of American footballers who go into, they do adverts all the time. They have media training, so it's an easy enough jump so they can go into the films and stuff like that. And I guess like the only other sport where people have made the kind of the crossover is wrestling. Like there's no other sport where you can think of immediately where you go, oh, so many people have become actors afterwards. But I guess it's the first one I can think of that's a rugby player who's kind of, become an actor.
Yeah, it's like alien territory, and I love it. And I think, I mean, the core of the conversation is going to be these 2 leads, but the chemistry of Peter Claffey, Dexter Salansel is incredible. I mean, when they're doing screen, I mean, the one thing Game of Thrones has never got wrong is casting. Doesn't matter any spin-off, original show, this show, they have always nailed the casting, the chemistry between individuals. Obviously you get a lot of child actors, different eras of different times. They've all clicked, and that a lot of the time with young actors, it does come down to chemistry tests as to who they opt with. They opt with a 2 or a different 2. Like there might be 5 different pairs of 2s they want to go with. and I loved these two together. But Peter Caffey in particular, Game of Thrones, we've had this mindset of there are so many knights, there are so many, I don't want to say evil knights, but very rarely do you just genuinely have, as Balon would say, a good man. And I think this is at its root. Game of Thrones has always punished the meaning of what it is to be a good person. And they still do it in this show. And it's a core concept of George R. R. Martin's storytelling about who can come out on top. So to have Sir Duncan in the lead, be this sort of, let's be really polite, like the BFG, big friendly giant, he's a bit of an idiot, going into the tent, are you here to kill me? No, I'm here for supper. Like, he's not the most switched on. It's a kind of Lenny and George, mice and men, in a really nice way. Pair him up with Dexter Silencer, and I've got to say this, and I'm once again going to claim it as British actor. Another great young child actor that's British, and like many others that have come before him, sometimes you can look at some young actors and know that, okay, this person's going to be acting still in their 20s, 30s. And it's not me picking on child actors. Not all of them, but I must say more so Americans, and that's different reasons, different laws around child acting. But certainly over here in England, they're protected a little bit more when they're on set on British productions. These two together are remarkable. And I'm sat there, I get what George R. R. Martin says, when these two want to have 100 different stories, I could picture these guys going on 100 different adventures, just going up and down Westeros together. They click from the first moments. They are both so likable and have their own identities. And what it does in a really remarkable way is it creates distrust between the two, with the revelation that Egg is actually a prince. He is part of the Targaryen dynasty. And that is kind of the core of the story where it ends up going. And I think it's very brave for a show to do that. Whilst it's obvious and makes it interesting and it does tie into the throne somewhat, this is the least throne-orientated Game of Thrones show so far. And I think this is kind of what we need. Heading into, sorry if I keep going tangent, I'll pass over after this, but heading into season 1, I was worried, like, how are we going to do for the first non-throne orientated Game of Thrones? Because it isn't about who's next or what's next. It's about these two people on this adventure or this journey. And I think they nailed it, because you could quite easily get that wrong and lose identity, but they don't. There's like a finite line they didn't cross, maybe because of the lineage of the throne and who he's paired up with, I don't know. But what did you think about them together?
I think they were a fantastic duo, and I'm sure there would have been these chemistry tests between, different actors across the board. But, Dexter Solanzal, I mean, even watching him act in the background, there's a few things where, like, he just does these little acting things in the background of the scenes, which I've seen people pick through online and stuff like that after the fact and go, oh my God, he's acting even when he's not on camera, if that makes sense. Like, he's just there, he is the character. And I think what helped as well is it is, like you said, that kind of Lenny and George kind of like, what one person is, a bit more clicked in, and he's the younger character, but he's also the character that technically should have more power. And then you've got Dunk, who's the one with the actual power, but, is a bit dim. And it's a fantastic pairing. It's so well written. And I mean, like we said before, like watching Game of Thrones made me want to pick up a Game of Thrones book. Watching House of the Dragon doesn't make me want to pick up Fire and Blood, but watching this show does make me want to pick up, the Hedge Knight and the other novellas and everything like that. And that's because the characterization on screen of these characters, how they've been put forward, are, they bring life to it. They just bring life to it. But honestly, like, one thing that I want to point out with these two in particular, and what you were saying about it's the first time it's not about the throne, I really enjoy that. You don't need big stakes for there to be big stakes. Like, you get so personally invested in these characters. It's not jumping over the map to the different areas and picking your faction and everything like that. You're following Dunk, you're following Egg, you're following them on their first adventure, their meeting, them, the first quarrel that they maybe have, and everything that comes from that and the fallout from that. And the stakes are really personal. Dunk's put on trial because of, because he wants to prove that he's a real knight, but also because, he took in Egg and kind of helped Egg along without even realizing. And then, like, Egg's dad basically, like, kills his uncle. It's like the knock-on effects of it. It's all so personal. It's all so in front of you. With the throne, and especially with Game of Thrones, because the stakes are massive, everything has to be massive. This didn't need to be massive. It was a small affair, but everything feels bigger because of it. I like it. I really like it. And I think more in the universe things like this work better than retreading the same story. You can watch Game of Thrones and you can watch House of the Dragon, and you know that everyone's fighting for the throne. I know that the next Harry Potter series is just a remake of the next Harry Potter series. There isn't a spin-off like Fantastic Beasts, but with Fantastic Beasts, it's the end of the world event, just like with Harry Potter. Imagine if Fantastic Beasts was not an end of the world event and was just some guy trying to
like
save
the
these
first one
animals.
should have been.
Exactly. This is what it could have been. Take note, HBO.
But don't give them ideas, because
no, I'm not gonna.
It'll be Netflix soon, don't worry.
Exactly. But I mean, even the interactions with the other characters, the smaller characters that get introduced, they all feel so full of life and so individual and so unique. Whether it's the different Targaryens that come through, I think we meet like 5 or 6 in this, but they're all reasonably important as far as the story is concerned. And then, like, you have other characters going through, like the ones who join him in the fight, with Daniel Ings playing, can't remember his name, Baratheon. What is his name? Baratheon. I just think of him as the Baratheon guy, Lionel Baratheon. You also have Danny Webb playing Arlen as his master, and the flashbacks to that and his interactions with Dunk. And, you know, even the Fossways and all the other random characters who are thrown into it, everything works so well. Everyone seems so, you know, individualized, but it just works together as an ensemble.
Yeah, and I think something I've seen a lot of, and I think episode 5 is like the best example of this. This show's budget, now it's not a small budget, but comparative to where Thrones went at the end, how House of the Dragon has been, this is tiny. I mean, I think I've read this is just under 10 million an episode, which probably puts it at like a $50-60 million budget. Well, no, it does do it 6 episodes. Whereas House of the Dragon, you're looking at what, about $20 million an episode, 8 episodes a season. And I think there's got to be credit to the showrunners, the production designers, and everyone contributing to it, that it doesn't, whilst it feels small scale, it doesn't feel too small scale. And where I compare it to, which is maybe unfair because it was season 1 of the very beginning. Remember how in Game of Thrones season 1, they couldn't show any of the battles between, obviously, the Lannisters and the Starks because they didn't have the budget. That's totally understandable. And when they could start House of Dragon season 1, they could put in the expensive dragons because they had the pre-existing audience. I like the fact that this stayed to its roots. It retained a smaller budget, and it kind of made me think about The Mandalorian ever so slightly, not for a budget reason, but when The Mandalorian starts, that opening scene of episode 1, season 1, this is a new Star Wars. This is a different Star Wars. It fits in the universe, but this isn't your episode key lightsabers. Now, obviously, I want to say carefully, it somehow turned into a little bit of that, didn't it? And obviously now it's a $200 million film. But yeah, they got everything right about the production, and it complements House of the Dragon, right? People might be looking forward to House of the Dragon more so now because of this show. There's no comparison between them. They're not really tied together. The lineage is different. The timepiece is different. But because they've just had 6 excellent shows in that universe, people might be more switched on. Now, I do think that's why they've released the House of the Dragon season 3 straight after episode 5, because they are capitalizing on the good PR that's come their way. And before I get
clearly,
to the favorite,
like clearly, people went, "Oh shit! People are saying this is one of the best TV episodes ever made. Time to advertise the other show that we have, which hasn't had that same appraisal."
Makes sense. And where I was thinking, we'll go over a couple more characters before we get into maybe the best bits. But I want to talk, and it's really restrained on the spoiler free about this. Prince Baylor, played by Bertie Carvel. Now, I am unfamiliar with his on-screen appearances. Off-screen, he had won a Laurence Olivier Award twice. Once was for playing Trunchbull on Matilda when the musical started in London, and the other was for, a drama play which is now about to be a Danny Boyle film. People will recognize him in the future because he's been cast as Fudge in HBO's Harry Potter. So he's going to be season 1 onwards. They're bringing him in earlier. He's the MVP of the show for me. And I think I'm not alone in thinking that now. And this is where praise goes to George R. R. Martin for being the devil that he is. He is so good at, like a Ned Stark, you write an honorable individual, a noble person, somebody who is morally in the right, who you would want to have lead you to war. Prince Baelor is set first in line for the throne after his dad, and he dies. And that's a spoiler alert. We're doing spoilers. To bring in this from even the early episodes, when you're getting him at a scene of time, like, I kind of like this guy. He remembers someone that knocked him off the horse at a tournament years ago. He gives a really lovely speech about, I make it my effort to learn about everybody that's sort of beaten me in battle and whatnot. And by the time you're leading an episode by episode, when you get to Dunk's speech in episode 4, Baelor coming out to fight for him, that's proper Game of Thrones at this point in time.
Yeah.
Like, you're not expecting him to go, but you're sat there like, that's my king. Like, that's the king. And oh my word, did you know about him dying before episode 5? Because I didn't. And when you get to the end of the episode, I'm not feeling a bit great. And I'm like, yeah, just a fight, fair enough. When they take the helmet off and everyone's face, and he's just sat there like, something's happened here. It gives a great speech about, we need more men like you. And then you see the back of his head for that split second, and he's done for. I was just sat like, yeah, George R. R. Martin's done it again. And I think he spoke on record to say that had Prince Baelor have not died, the realm would have had peace. It would have been just. There would have been no issues. We never had got to Game of Thrones. It would have been like the best possible king. And he was taken from them. Now, I will say in retrospect, that is a great concept then used to kill off a character. Because that adds to how the cynicalism of Game of Thrones has always been with that throne, desperation for the throne, those that seek power crave it, and all that sort of stuff. Baelor is the MVP of the show for me. And what I love in turn, and I'll talk very briefly about Micah, his brother, he's no villain. Sam Sproul's playing and people recognize him as a very British character actor. He's not an antagonist, he's not a villain. He didn't mean to kill his brother, and he will live with that for the rest of his life. And spoiler alert, he does live with that for the rest of his life. The backstory with them two is they single-handedly won the war together against the Blackfire Rebellion. They were like a duo in it, and they loved each other. There wasn't any sort of wanting to knock each other off like other royals. It's been the opposite. And oh man, I think it's one of the most satisfying character arcs. And to place him in this show with people like Dunk and Egg, I think added so much more to it. And it kind of makes it that much more gutting, which in turn enhances the show because it's what Game of Thrones does best.
He's almost like a father figure in a certain way to Dunk in those moments, because he is portraying himself as the noblest knight, which is something that Dunk aspires to be. And he sets the tone, he sets these things forward. He's all about kind of, we've got to remember our history. We've got to have fair trials. He's the one who puts Dunk forward and says kind of like, you should say trial by combat. You'll beat him easily. Like, come on. And I guess the only villain of this show would be Aeron, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Like, he's a dick. He is. Finn Bennett plays him well. He's a massive dick. He's your Joffrey. He is, that style of character you just love to hate, who demands the seven, something that isn't invoked, I think it's only invoked like twice in the entire universe of Game of Thrones,
And his dad's literally sat there like, fucking fight him. Like,
yeah.
It is, but it's that throne thing, is it? I mean, considering Micah and Aeron, they're not even in line for the throne. They are, they're just princes. And what even of the history side of Game of Thrones, that because the dragons have died out, because of House of Dragon, the Targaryen family is not the powerhouse it was. There's no fear. They're having to go to lowborn tournaments because that's their job as the royal family. They don't have any power to seize control like they had to do. And even those knock-on effects from House of the Dragon that will lead into obviously where Game of Thrones goes, I love the Targaryen side of things. And I want to chuck in another name very briefly before we sort of round out a couple of other chats. One of the standouts, who the internet has took him to heart, who's the face of the memes, Sir Lionel Baratheon, played by Daniel Inks, no, not the footballer. Never have I I'm not saying I fell in love with the character, but when you see him on screen for the first time, it's kind of like he seems like a chill guy. Like this is theoretically, you know, Robert Baratheon's going to descend from him, and I want to have a dance and drink and get pissed and have fun. Like when you get the dance scenes, it's like you can't have this in Game of Thrones, and I understand why because it's a different story with different purposes. But I want to be in that tent with all of them. Like, and the fact he just wants. Well, why are you involved in the fight? Well, you know, it doesn't happen often. I'd like to be there, and I think him and Dunk make a very good double act. And if people know what the future has, I don't think it'd be in this show, but where their futures intertwine with one another is really interesting. And I love the decision to actually age him up because he's meant to be about Dunk's age, quite young, and he isn't. But I love the breath. And again, it's you bring in another family name, but you're not chucking in the Lannisters, the Starks, the Targaryens, all of them's. You're chucking in like, okay, there's a couple of Targaryens and a Baratheon who's just there because he's there.
Yeah.
The dance scene I absolutely loved. I loved him in that, and his little earring as well. It's proper. Yeah, it's proper Game of Thrones, isn't it?
It's also the first time we've seen the stag antlers on the helmet, on the war helmets and stuff like that, and just his giddiness of joining the battle, like, and being a part of it and stuff like that. Like he's a character who's almost like completely psychotic, but at the same time the fun side of it, not like psychotic evil, psychotic good. But no, I mean, he's I've seen him in various different things before. He was in Sex Education, he was in The Gentleman, the TV series, so he's going for a bit of a good kind of part of his career at the moment.
Going to be in Star Wars next year.
Exactly. I think he's an actor that we'll see a lot more of, like kind of thrown into various different shows now that he's almost not been pushed into the same character role, because weirdly he plays a very similar-ish character in The Gentleman, a bit of a nutcase, but one you can get behind kind of in that show, and same with this one here. So maybe he'll just end up filling that role in future years to come. But no, I really enjoyed him as well. And I want to have also a shout out. I've got to bring up the actor's name here because in the scenes that he had, he was fantastic. Danny Webb playing Arlen of Pennytree, who is the original Hedge Knight. I knew I recognized him from somewhere. He was in the Ood episode of Doctor Who, the Satan Pit episodes. So I knew I recognized him from somewhere. He was fantastic in the series, being that kind of flashback figure, that kind of drunkard knight who doesn't swear to any house, but, wanders the countryside and takes Dunk on, especially in episode 5, when we kind of first see him, take him on board and how he kind of saved Dunk's life and everything like that, and the tragedy behind that. But also the lovely scene at the end of the series where he just kind of, a true knight always finishes his stories. I don't know if that's a dig at George R.R., but we'll see. And the whole him kind of riding off into the sunset kind of ending of him kind of parting ways with the main characters. I love that, and he played the role very, very well across the series.
Definitely, it's a really nice, and for a 6-episode series, it's 3 hours. That's not a massive runtime. The amount of characters they brought in, and you had the right amount of development. They never overtook the lead. They never ousted someone. They were never too little developed either. And there is more to come by some of these characters. I won't get into the lineage of the throne for people that are curious at maybe what's going to come down the line. You obviously have the prophecy before you know that Egg is a prince. You have the prophecy about, was it dying in flames?
You'll be king. People hate you. You'll die in flames.
Yeah, and it's the fear he has. So if you haven't worked at that point that he might not be who he seems, there you go. And I've also loved this where it's led to the wildest theory, which I don't want to give too much time to, but I have to shout it out.
Yeah.
Because of Egg, there is now a theory that Viserys is a Targaryen. Don't get me started on why. I think it's just because he's bald and it hides his hairs. And like clutching at straws of clutching at straws.
Yeah.
And the really sad thing is, it was actually a good theory, but you just clap it on the head like, no, come on, wake up now.
Yeah,
Varys isn't a secret Targaryen all along.
Yeah.
But this is what I said. It's opened up that portal to Game of Thrones again. Well, I've been listening to the soundtrack loads. I've been seeing those clips on my social media feeds, which is when you know it's back, and it just brings me back to that root of sort of episode 9 of Star Wars, if I'm allowed to say it, where the highs that were the highs, but I haven't yet to revisit. I mean, it's a bit different to episode 9 because you're comparing a season to a film, but I know people that have watched Game of Thrones since it finished, as in they'd never seen it. They watched all 8 seasons. They don't dislike it as much as others, and I understand why, because in a binge format it would be different. And also they're given the reputation that it ends really badly, which I think is fair. But here we are in the year 2026, and The Winds of Winters hasn't even been published, let alone the final book. And kind of something I want to actually, no, we'll do that after. But I want to jump to you before we do like favorite scene episode, which we probably both know what it'll be. Is there anything that didn't work in the show for you? Because we always kind of not want to pick negatives, but we spoke very positively about this so far. Because I'll be honest, nothing jumped out negatively on that first watch. I wasn't disliking performances. I wasn't struggling with the story, the fact it was away from the throne, the fact that we had these different characters, the different timepiece. I was worried, as I said, about certain things of it, but the show sort of aced it, and I've come out of this pretty flawless with it, and I think it speaks for itself with how people spoke about it 5 weeks later. Yes, to me, the first episode or two is a tiny bit slow, but it kind of needs to be when you're setting up a new era, new characters, a new everything. And I think the playing the trick of fading in the Game of Thrones theme and not doing it to cut to the shit is probably one of the funniest gags, because, you know, people still criticize House of the Dragon for having the Game of Thrones theme. I agree and disagree. It's a tricky one to be involved in. I'm so glad this didn't, because this would be like
the only time where the music came through strong was when Baelor declares.
Yes,
at the 7,
and that was right to do it too.
Yeah,
but that was the time.
And I guess if in the series, if we're talking about that, that's kind of the moment where the throne dynamic shifts, because him putting himself into the tournament is what ends up shifting the throne, and it creates that timeline.
Defending the honor of a hedge knight is what leads to the events of everything. It's kind of wild if you think about it. And I like this. Exactly. And it's made me give not more credit to George R. R. Martin. This is really like I've been slagging off, but it makes you think about the depth of his novels, that it isn't just a here's this show and here's a couple of things that happened before. There is a deep historical lineage where this series has been written as, I think it's like 300, 400 years like total, and he has mapped that out and he has planned that out. And whilst it's easy to joke and laugh about the fact the books haven't been finished, which I do agree with and I do, what has been created in that world, I'm not going to make comparisons to other fantasy that's maybe too easy to do, some that go back thousands of years, but these hundreds of years are detailed as much as some things that cover thousands of years. And I think credit where credit's due. This show proves that he's justified to take time during the main series to make novels like this. And obviously we know we are going to get a season 2 of this show, probably a season 3. Maybe it will just be 3 seasons, who knows. But what kind of I want to jump to is talking favorite episode, favorite scenes. I've got a feeling we're both going to say episode 5 and the best scene, episode 4, final speech.
Yep, pretty much.
It's peak Game of Thrones.
I do want to say there is one thing that I want to talk about, which is it is peak Game of Thrones. I think it's great TV as well. Yeah. And it's brought up the debate of TV ratings again and how things are judged online.
Have you seen what's been going on?
I have seen what's been going on. And it's why I want to not spend too much time talking about it, but I do want to point out everyone's an idiot. It's a good TV show. Breaking Bad's a good TV show. They can both be 10 out of 10 episodes. But review bombing a show when it has a good episode because it has a chance to dethrone your episode as the highest rated episode of all time is ridiculous. Like, they can both be good episodes. We can both appreciate both of them. This is the whole thing of franchising and fan bases and everything like that. And I'm not saying that IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes or any of those reviewing sites have it right, because they don't. Like, opinionated kind of talking through reasoning and stuff like that is the best way to judge things. Like, but like it's been all the internet has been talking about. Both sides are wrong. Both things are good.
I was I love Breaking Bad like you. I love Game of Thrones. Ozymandias is correct in being the best the best Breaking Bad episode. When I saw that Night of the Seven Kingdoms had like outscored it, I was like, oh, okay, that's fair play. That's really good. And then just the outrage of the last videos where they're reviewing bombing, and now any show that's near it's getting review bombed. I'm like, it epitomizes the issues I've had with the likes of Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb for many years. Talk to human beings, touch grass, have conversations. Okay, you're in Austria, I'm back home, but we can still have these chats. And just the internet is, I mean, today of all days, what's been going on in the BAFTAs last night's equal is outrageous. With what I've seen, what people are posting, just a lot of idiots everywhere. But one thing I want to talk about before we start to round it, head into final thoughts. This isn't the most recent thing for Game of Thrones. We don't talk theatre on here. We aren't highbrow. But I do want to talk about a theatre announcement, if I'm allowed to, very briefly. It was announced last week as well. Obviously, this would have been planned much longer. The Mad King is getting a theatre production, which is the moments that lead to Robert's Rebellion, or includes Robert's Rebellion, written by George R.R. Martin. And this is going to be premiering at the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon in the UK. AKA, I'm sorry, guys, 10 minutes from my front door, so I need to be there. But Game of Thrones is now coming to theatre. The likes of Harry Potter, obviously stuff like Lion King, Stranger Things has done it. But Game of Thrones is coming to the theatre. It's coming to, let's be honest, more of a theatrical background, like the heart of theatre. I don't like Stratford. I moan about Shakespeare all the time, but it's kind of exciting that we're getting the Mad King as a theatre production. A lot of people have complained that they wish it were going to be a TV series, and I totally get that. I would love to see Robert's Rebellion. I think one day it will be on their to-do list. I think when they inevitably get Aegon's Conquest out the way, when House Dragon is done, I think we'll get a Robert's Rebellion. The problem is that it's so close timeline-wise that they've showed some flashback. I mean, the Ned Stark actor Robert Aramayo just won a BAFTA yesterday, and he won't be able to play Ned Stark again. So I'm really intrigued by the concept of it in theatre. I'm assuming after Stratford, it will go to London and then probably New York and the usual big suspects and sit there for a year or two. But does that interest you as a Game of Thrones fan? Because I never thought of theatre, but I am also sat there like, I'm intrigued at the possibility of the Mad King. But I don't know how the hell they'd stage it.
I'd be disappointed if they did it. I've heard very good things about First Shadow and stuff like that, but I'd be disappointed if they did it as in they're going to do a theatre production as a prequel to what would eventually be a series about, the Mad King and about Robert's Rebellion and everything like that. And it's one of those things where even if they do it like, the First Shadow and make it available online, it's not accessible for everyone, and therefore it shouldn't be considered part of the main story. You want people to see this whole story, and you're caring more about making it a limited production in one place where people can't get to it. It's cash grab, surely.
Well, this is it. I'm intrigued. I'm very curious as to see this. I mean, I don't know enough about theatre, but this feels like one of those theatre shows where they'd be able to try and pull out big names for a theatre production for a few months. Not just picking on Stratford because it's Stratford, but there is going to be that lure of the fact it's RSC. Like George R. R. Martin's been going around Stratford, which is wild. But I'm the same as you that eventually, because I also don't. Robert's Rebellion, I've read so much about it. I've never read the books outright because I've always now wait for them to be over to do it properly. But I've read a lot on Robert's Rebellion. I know a lot about what happens. I don't know how that's going to get condensed into a 3-hour theatre production. So good luck to them all in the right way. I would very much like to go. I will try and go. But I am also in the same boat as you. Eventually, when the time comes, they've got to be getting that onto the big screen. Like, that's got to be a
100%.
That's like 1 season, 2 seasons. House of the Dragon, capping it at 4, fine. Duncan Egg, 3 seasons, maybe that's fine. Aegon's Conquest, talk of a film. I actually agree with that big time because it'll be a bit boring and repetitive. Robert's Rebellion, 10-episode miniseries, 2 seasons, who knows? But it makes me excited for the future of Game of Thrones. They've got something right. I'm not saying they've got it wrong anyway. I liked House of the Dragon, but it's nice to have that variety in the world, which I think is what it is rich for. And I think this has been needed. And heading into my final thoughts on this, it has been a fantastic series of TV. But more interesting than that, I love the reaction by IMDb user ratings. that this show has had, that people have come together, they've been watching this. It's going to help create careers and push careers into new directions. And it sort of reopened that hype for, I want more from Westeros. I want to see what more there is to learn and for them to do. And I'm excited at what that's going to be in the future.
I completely agree. I thought the series was fantastic. I'm actually intrigued to go back and watch it again and see if I pick up on anything and enjoy it. And I mean, I'm going to recommend it to people. And it's just like you said, it's opened up the universe again. It's a little side quest. It has something to do with the eventual Game of Thrones stuff like that, but it's not a major like House of the Dragon, big fight scenes, blah blah blah. It's an intimate affair about two characters. It's character study. So, I'm looking forward to watching more of this when they're filming the next series now, but I'm looking forward to more of this coming out. And I'm also I'm looking forward to House of the Dragon as well.
Definitely. And that is how we're going to round up this review. So thank everybody that's been watching at home and they've been commenting along as well. If you're not watching it live, you're watching it later on, do comment your thoughts on A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Maybe you'll watch this in the years to come and there's been a season 2 and 3 and it's wrapped up in a nice little bow. Who knows? But there will obviously be more Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon, when it airs in the summer, we'll be covering that on the channel. That is June. I don't think they've confirmed what week in June, but I'm assuming as soon as Euphoria finishes airing, it will go HBO Sunday will go straight into House of the Dragon from that point in time. So there's a lot more Game of Thrones coming. It's a very busy time on the channel at the moment. We've got the Pixar retrospective every Tuesday. There's Oscar season as well. There's Peaky Blinders reviews coming out. Season 6 is on Thursday. The film comes out next week, which still sounds weird to say out loud. Yes, there's a Peaky Blinders film. And there's a lot more happening. So everybody get involved. If you've liked this video, hit the like button, do subscribe if you want more. We've got Game of Thrones reviews. We've got House of Dragons reviews on our channel homepage. You can find that if they scroll far enough down. So that is me rounding out. Tate, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're in Austria as well. We'll have you on again soon. And everybody at home, take care. We'll see you then.